Hello and welcome to my capstone presentation. My name is Maria Blasioli and I am currently a senior at Seton Hill University majoring in elementary and special education with a minor in psychology. Today I'll be reflecting on the past 4 years of my experience at Seton Hill, discussing some of my favorite projects as well as my accomplishments. For the past 14 weeks I have been student teaching at both Aquinas Academy in the kindergarten classroom and Nicely Elementary School in the 4th grade classroom, teaching both math and science. So to start all of my lessons in the classroom, I begin with a visual aid, which is my schedule, so I'll be doing the same today. So to start with my introduction, I am going over my board's theme, my quote, and my objective. I will learn about Maria's Capstone. I will then go into my NACCE standards and Seton Hill objectives and the 6 different kinds of artifacts I found for those, which is my newsletter, IEP, and sing-along book. Also my leadership, Black Lives Matter paper, and ethics in education, and then I will be wrapping up with a farewell statement. So to discuss my theme, we first have to know what book my board is representing. So it's representing the I Was So Mad book by Mercer Mayer, with my little critter in the middle, my bathtub, and my waters overflowing in the bathtub. So if you look at my board, I have 6 towel racks on the side for the 6 characters in the story, also for my 6 NACCE standards. Then in the middle, I have my Seton Hill objectives, my components, and my St. Elizabeth and Seton quote at the top. Then on the 2 sides, I have frame pictures of the little critters that are in my Mercer Mayer stories. So if you've never read a Mercer Mayer story before, I want to kind of show you what the illustrations look like. So on this first page, I'm going to read it to you. So I wanted to keep some frogs in the bathtub, but Mom wouldn't let me. I was so mad. So we have Mama Critter and Little Critter over here. Next, it's I wanted to play with my little sister's dollhouse, but Dad wouldn't let me. I was so mad. We have Dad Critter, Baby Critter, and Little Critter. So I grew up reading these stories at my grandmother's house, especially with my cousins. So these are my favorite stories and my favorite kind of series out of all the kids' books in the world because they remind me of my childhood, my grandma, and my cousins. So then to go into my St. Elizabeth and Seton quote, it is one of the first rules of my happiness is to be satisfied with good in whatever degree I can attain it. So I kind of take this quote and I think it means that you are finding the happiness and the good in everything. So you're always looking at the positive situation rather than looking at the negative in any situation. So next I'm going to start into my NACCE standards, where I'm starting with standard 2, building family and community relationships, which is on my board over there. So being able to understand that families have varying values, cultural norms, and statuses within the community, and varying communities can include the socioeconomic status of individual families along with their cultures, values, and resources that are presented to them. So to start with this standard, I want to begin with my newsletter. So on the front page of my newsletter, I have my calendar and important dates at the bottom. And my favorite part of my newsletter is my daily schedule, because in my daily schedule I have all the supplies students will need for the school year, their specials, the schedule that they will be following every day, as well as an inclusion statement at the bottom. So in their schedule it shows you exactly how much time they're spending in each subject, what subjects they have. So I think this is great for parents to have in case they ever want to make a doctor or dentist appointment. They know what classes their student or child will be missing and for how long. Next in my newsletter, I wanted to touch upon my parent education section, which kind of talks about some of the milestones for this grade level, and typical and atypical behavior for their child. Then lastly, I wanted to include kind of the student section in my newsletter to make them a part of it as well, so it's not just boring information within my newsletter, which is a picture that a student created. It says, this month Lisa was awarded the Art Achievement Award for her still life drawing, which is right here. So just kind of adds some excitement to the newsletter rather than it just being generalized information. So next I'm going to go into my NACCE 3 standard. So in NACCE 3, it is observing, documenting, and assessing to support young children and families. So teachers should be able to create and use appropriately the various types of assessments within the classroom. They should be able to observe, document, and assess the behavior that they are seeing in their students. So monitoring their behavior and understanding why they are developing in different ways and just kind of taking note of their observations. So within this component, I chose to use the artifact of my IEP. So for this component, we created this online on IEP Writer, which is a wonderful website to use to really start to begin to understand the process of writing an IEP. So on the website, you kind of fill in all the information, but it really tells you what goes where and how to word the information correctly. So for example, in the present levels of academic achievement, I talk about, her name was Elsie, Elsie's performance in ELA, social studies, science, and her specials of art, music, and gym. So the website really walks you through this process. I think this is a great way to learn how to use the IEP and how to know how to write one, and really understanding what sections you do fill out and what sections you might not have to fill out. So this is a great resource, and I loved creating this. Then my last NACCE standard and artifact is NACCE 4, which is using developmentally effective approaches to connect with children and families. So those meeting this criteria are able to have a good rapport with the children both within their classroom and out of their classroom. So having the ability to implement strategies that solely pertain to early childhood learners. So for this standard, I wanted to use my sing-along book because I loved creating this book. I love being able to write the pages and illustrate the book. So I read this both to the CDC with my class, and I used this book in my placement at Aquinas in kindergarten. So I was able to go through and read the story and talk about how each time we go through the story, we're subtracting one witch. So that's what they were learning about. They were learning how to subtract one. So this story is much like the 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed, when each time a monkey jumped off and hit his head, they were subtracted from the total monkeys that were left. So for example, it says 5 little witches stirring up a stew. One fell in and turned blue. So I would ask my students, well, how many witches did we start with? We started with 5. Then what happened? 1 fell in. So we subtracted 1, so now we have 4 witches left. So it goes through that until there are no witches left stirring up the stew. So following that standard, I'm going to start into my Seton Hill objectives. So my Seton Hill objective 1 is communication and problem solving. So within this objective, I wanted to talk about my leadership and some of the ways that I've accomplished my leadership and grown as a leader throughout my 4 years at Seton Hill. So first I was inducted into Alpha Lambda Delta National Honor Society, where I have my certification here. I was also inducted into the National Society of Leadership and Success, so my certificate for that is here as well as my quartz. I also was a former treasurer of 2 clubs on campus, as well as I hosted many different club events, fundraisers, and other organizational programs. I also was a leader during my volunteer experience, where I took the lead and helped answer questions and appointed people to where they were supposed to be doing. During student teaching, I took the lead in the classroom, being able to stand up in front of my students and teach them. And then I wanted to talk about why is leadership even important. So leadership's important as it motivates higher level of performance, and it helps people grow, and it inspires others. So personally, I want to inspire my students to love learning, love school, and have them set goals for themselves, and then I want them to attain these goals and be able to set goals that they can reach. So next, for my Seton Hill Objective 2, I have my Black Lives Matter movement paper. So for this one, it's about the historical, cultural, and global awareness. So I was able to take a current topic that was happening within our society, within our world as a whole, and kind of discuss like the importance of it and why this is such an important topic. So within my paper, I talked about the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, Anti-Blackness, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Articles 21 and 20, number 1 and 19. So I talked about in my paper how all of these rights that I just named are being infringed upon for Black lives, and how we can start to stop this kind of infringement upon certain ethnic and racial groups and classes within society, not just for those that are Black, but also for other groups. So then lastly, my last Seton Hill objective, I have objective number 4, which is here. It's reflection and self-assessment. So within that objective, I have my ethics and education paper, where I talked about 3 main points. for three main situations that occurred for me to create this paper. So first, it was the Association of American Educators Ethical Codes that I used for 4 principles. For my first principle was ethical conduct towards students, ethical conduct towards practices and performance, ethical conduct towards professional colleagues, and parents and community. So the 3 situations that I discussed was the Brown versus Board of Education case, which was unethical due to segregation, where students posted a photo of a crowded hallway during COVID. They were suspended. None of the students were wearing masks in the hall. There was way too many students there at one time with no social distancing. So this was unethical, as the student was suspended even though that she was looking out for her colleagues, her friends, and for the other staff in the building. And lastly, my last ethical or unethical situation that happened was a Texas senior was barred from prom and graduation due to his ethic hairstyle of dreadlocks. So it is unethical to tell someone how to wear their hair or to bar someone from attending an event because their hair is a certain way. So let's look back at my schedule. So did I introduce my lesson, or not my lesson, but my presentation? Yes. Did I go through my NACCE standards and my SHU objectives? I did, and now it's time for my farewell messages. So before I end, I wanted to talk about my binder. So within my binder, I have all of the components listed on the board, as well as my objectives and standards. So starting on page 2, I have NACCE Standard 2 at the top. I have my 2 artifacts that go along with it, as long as a paragraph that tells why that artifact relates back into my standard. So now that we've gone over all of my Seton Hill objectives and my NACCE standards, that kind of concludes my presentation for today and all of the necessities that go into my capstone project. So before I leave, I kind of wanted to give some thank yous to my professors and to the faculty that have helped me so tremendously throughout the past 4 years. So starting with Dr. Harris, I wanted to thank you for everything you have done for me over the past 4 years, from creating such a positive learning environment to writing recommendation letters for me. I could not have asked for a better advisor, a better mentor, or a better professor. Dr. K-Spear, I wanted to thank you for your passion and willingness to help wherever you were needed. You became an advisor for 2 of my clubs without even batting an eye, and quote-unquote signed your life away on all of my treasured documents I presented to you. So your dedication to your students has never gone unnoticed. Dr. Tamburino, I wish I had been able to have you as a professor in more than 2 classes, but I'm thankful for being able to work with you in the Education Club. So thank you again for everything you've done for me in Education Club and within writing recommendation letters for me. You are more than appreciated, and Seton Hill is lucky to have you. For Dr. Vogel, even though I only had you for 1 undergraduate course, I'm excited to continue learning with you in my master's degree, and I have learned so much from you about IEPs that past students wish they could have encountered. So thank you for always being so welcoming when I'm in the education hallway and answering my plethora of questions about the master's program. Then, of course, Dr. Shelton, I am so pleased I was able to have you as a professor and as a student teaching director. So thank you for always giving honest feedback on my assignments and being so warm and welcoming. Your positive attitude and in-depth explanations enriches every class that you teach. And lastly, Karen Morgan, thank you for all you do in the office to make all the students' educational journey go a little smoother. You've answered so many questions for me and have always been so welcoming and on top of everything. So Seton Hill truly found the best when they hired you. So just my final words on my presentation as a whole. Words are powerless to express my gratitude for you all. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for never letting me down and just being so gracious and grateful and kind for the past 4 years. I could not have asked for a better faculty or a better university to have earned my undergraduate degree from and completed such amazing projects and accomplishments with. So thank you all so very much.